This is a free video lesson by tauntly.co.uk teaching you how to write a formal report specifically for First Language English IGCSE, but this could apply to any English GCSE where you have to write a report. For example, English as a second language also has a formal report on there too. You can download this PowerPoint and take a review quiz and find more resources like this on my website, which is tauntly.co.uk. I'll put a link in the description for the review quiz and for other resources, so do check that out. And if you are a teacher, there's also teaching resources on there too. Firstly then, let's begin with some background information. Why even study report writing? So on paper 1 of First Language English, you will have these 3 questions. Question 1, your comprehension and summary. Question 2, your short answer vocabulary questions and language analysis questions. And question 3, which is your extended response to reading. Now on the question 3 extended response, you will be asked to write one of these text types. So a letter, a journal, also known as a diary, speech, interview, an article, which could be a magazine or a newspaper article, and a formal report. So therefore, it's really important that you guys know how to write all of these text types. I have got another video lesson about how to write a bunch of these text types. I'll link it. It's very good. You should check it out and subscribe. But formal report writing. Now, this is one that I didn't include in that original video lesson because a lot of teachers were skeptical as to whether or not it would actually come up. So in 2020, Cambridge changed their exam and it included then a report. But people weren't clear if that was correct, if it meant a newspaper report or an actual formal report, and if Cambridge would put it in. And so far, Cambridge hadn't put it in until November 2023. So now we're like, Cambridge are going to include reports. But it's quite interesting that it took them nearly 4 years to do it. And I kind of wonder if the reason why they've included it in November, which is a less big exam period compared to the summer exam, is if they are kind of testing the waters to see how people react, see how many complaints they get from schools and students, to perhaps put it in the summer. So I wouldn't be surprised now if we see report coming up regularly. But if you're scared, if you're like, oh my God, I'm not prepared to write a report, my teacher's not taught me it, blah, 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 have no fear. Because look at the grade boundaries for November. So you have 3 different exams, 3 different versions of paper 1, depending on your time zone. And all of the exams are out of 80. Now to get an A, on paper, on the first version, you needed 45 out of 80. The second version, 53, and the third version, 52. Can you guess which exam the report came up on? Ding, ding, ding. So this is the exam, paper 1, 1-1, is the one that report writing came up on. My guess is the grade boundaries are lower because students probably lost a lot of marks for not being able to write a formal report compared to the other 2 papers, and so therefore Cambridge made the grade boundaries very low indeed. So what I would say is if formal report comes up, you are kind of at an advantage if you watch all of this video lesson, because most people don't know how to write a report. Like, I'll be honest, lots of teachers just didn't teach it or didn't spend a lot of time teaching it or kind of breezed over it. And so if you've studied this video lesson and you've got it all down, everyone else is going to do not very well, and you're going to do very well, and the grade boundaries will probably be low again, or like low comparatively. So you're in a good position. So don't freak out. You can see here that you can lose a lot of marks and still come out with an A. So if anything, let this fill you with confidence and happiness if report writing does come up. Now we're focusing on report writing, of which you can get 10 marks, but you don't just get the 10 marks for being able to write a report, right? There are other things that are being assessed. So for example, being able to articulate your experiences and feelings and emotions, being able to paragraph and organise your ideas well, using a range of vocabulary and sentence structures, using accurate spelling, punctuation and grammar. And then this here is where your report writing is really being tested. Can you use an appropriate register for a report? Can you use language that sounds like a report? So actually, out of the assessment criteria, only one of them is explicitly testing how well your report writing is doing. So even if you don't really know how to write a report, but you write accurately with good vocabulary and you paragraph correctly, you can still probably come out with 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, no problem. Learn how to write a report and do all of the above. Great, let's get 9 out of 10, let's get 10 out of 10. Now I've got a more in-depth video lesson, my paper 1 walkthrough. So if you want to learn more about question 3, I will try to remember to link it. But basically, this is the most important thing. No matter what type of text you get given, whether it's a speech, whether it's a magazine article, whether it's a report, this is the most important thing. You should always write 3 paragraphs, one about each bullet point in the question, and they should be equal in length. That, if you remember nothing else, that is the most important thing. No introduction is necessarily needed for an interview or for a report. In fact, if you didn't write an introduction or conclusion for any of them, it wouldn't be a big deal. Do remember that the last bullet point is often more implicit. You will have to go hunting around for that and it won't give you the answers in the text. Aim to have 4 to 6 individual points for each paragraph and do not copy directly from the text. Always use your own words. Do remember to vary up your vocabulary, punctuation and sentencing, and check your SPAG carefully. Finally, you get marks for identifying details, explicit details, which will be the who, what, where, and how in the text, and for development, which is developing why someone did something, how they felt, or how they reacted. I've gone through that super fast because this is a report writing lesson, but do go and check out my other video lesson if this is all brand new to you. Something else that if you've been following my videos for a while should not be new is warmth. So when we are tackling any of these exam questions, you always need to identify the voice, audience, register, purpose and format of the text type that you are being asked to write to make sure that your register is appropriate. So voice, who are you writing as? Audience, who are you writing to? Register, how formal or informal should you be based on who you are and who you're writing to? Purpose, why are you writing? Are you discussing, persuading, arguing, informing, entertaining, etc.? And format, what text type have you been asked to write? In this case, it will be a formal report. So all of this together can help us figure out our writing style. What is the VORP in this question then? This is the November 2023 first ever formal report question, by the way. Get pumped, get excited for it. Question 3. You are Edgar. That night you write the report that your boss has asked for about the work the meet and greet team do. In your report you should explain what the role of meeting and greeting passengers involves at present, evaluate potential problems for both meet and greet staff and passengers, suggest how the experience of both passengers and meet and greet staff could be improved. Write the words of the report. Base your report on what you have read in text C, but be careful to use your own words. Address each of the 3 bullet points. So this is what I was talking about earlier. 1 paragraph for each of these bullet points and they should be equal. That is the most important thing. If you don't remember anything about report writing, remember that. That will get you a long way. Anyway, what is the VORP here? So, firstly, voice, Edgar, or employee, right? So you are someone who is subservient. You are lower status, you are Edgar. Who is the audience? The boss, your boss. So someone who is a high status. The purpose, to inform and to suggest. You're informing about what the current situation is and you're suggesting improvements. The register, therefore, formal, respectful, serious. Right, this is your boss, so you should not be rude or overly critical when giving suggestions. You need to be very, very neutral. Not only because you are an employee writing to your boss, but also the format, which is a report, is a very, very formal text type. It's the most formal text type of the text types you can be asked to write. So the general vibe, tone that you're going for is that you should be objective and neutral. So you are formal, respectful, serious, objective and neutral, not overly critical, and very, very clear. So that is the vault of our question. So perhaps you've already heard some, but what adjectives could you use to describe a report's register? How would you describe the tone, the atmosphere of a report? For example, one adjective you might use could be formal. Have a little think. Some suggestions for the register of a report. Formal, impersonal, uncontroversial, unemotive, objective, neutral, professional, clear, concrete, precise, direct, serious, authoritative, impartial, and reserved. Keep all of these adjectives in mind as we proceed through this lesson. Now we're going to have a look at an example report and we're going to unpick what makes this such a good example. As we read this example, which by the way is on your worksheet, you can download this worksheet from my website, it's linked down below. As we read through it, take notice of these 3 questions. What do you notice about the structure of the report? How is it organised? How does the report create an objective, professional and formal register? And what language features do you notice? Okay, let's read. A reminder of the task then. Write a report to your boss about the work of the meet and greet team. If you like, I will also link the past paper in there if you want to read the text that this is based on, but basically it's the staff that work at the airport that greet you into the airport and direct you where to go. The present role of meeting and greeting passengers. Upon arrival at the airport, customer care immediately begins with meet and greet staff waiting for passengers in the departure concourse. Staff arrive before passengers when the airport is empty to facilitate this smooth arrival. Following this, staff welcome passengers in a friendly manner to uphold the company's reputation, before checking that documents are in order. Luggage checking is also a priority, as staff must ensure that suitcases are not left unattended to prevent serious safety concerns. Finally, meet and greet staff give helpful information, such as directing passengers to the next stage of their journey, helping to ensure a smooth and stress-free experience for all travellers. Potential problems for both meet and greet staff and passengers. Despite the company's high standards, some potential problems have been identified. Firstly, security issues have been noted for passengers, with a theft incident occurring recently. Although this misunderstanding was quickly resolved, the airport layout has also proven problematic, with complaints of long passenger queues and a confusing environment that has caused some passengers to become lost. Furthermore, the current trolleys are outdated and have become unsteady, which poses a danger to children if hit by falling luggage. Secondly, some further problems have come to light for staff, such as claims of poor working conditions, with some staff reporting only having 15 minutes for their lunch break. This, coupled with inadequate time to train new staff properly, could lead to lower staff morale. Suggested improvements for both passengers and meet and greet staff. The above noted issues are easily remedied by making the following changes. Passengers with special needs or with families should be catered for more carefully. For example, elderly passengers would benefit from opening a fast-track check-in lane to avoid queues. Likewise, families with small children could be allocated a designated seating area with staff to support them through their journey. To address staff workload issues, we should hire more staff to allow for longer breaks and relieve pressure on colleagues. Committing to a robust training scheme for these new colleagues will allow for a better overall experience, so the initial costs of such a scheme would quickly be recouped by raising staff retention and customer loyalty. Finally, improving the logistics of the airports would significantly enhance customer experience. Clearer signage, removing lengthy roped-off queues and providing informational videos ahead of the journey are possible solutions to customer complaints in this area. Think back to our 3 questions then. What did you notice about the structure? How am I creating an objective and formal register? And what language features did you notice? Firstly then, with the structure, take a look at it here. You don't need to read it. The point is that you can see the way that it looks on the page. So you can turn the 3 bullet points into subheadings here. So you can see that each paragraph has got a subheading and then underneath it the relevant information. You should have 3 paragraphs, 1 per bullet point, and that each paragraph is roughly equal in size. And do make sure that each section stays focused on its aim. So the first paragraph is all about present situation. The second paragraph is about present problems, and the third paragraph is about possible solutions in the future. When some of my students did this exam question, I did notice they kind of mixed up the second and third bullet points, with lots of them suggesting solutions as they went through the problems, and it ended up with them losing focus and repeating themselves quite a lot. Some other things that you might want to notice then. So this report has got lots of transition phrases, which makes it easier to follow and gives it a more formal tone. For example, upon arrival at the airport, following this, and finally. So this helps us understand the sequential arrangement of what the meet and greet staff are doing, when they arrive, after that, and lastly. I am using some formal business vocabulary such as upholding the company's reputation and ensuring a smooth and stress-free experience. I am avoiding using first person I. This isn't necessary per se, but it is a nice touch which sounds more formal. And also finally, do notice that I'm using present tense verbs. These are things that the meet and greet staff are still doing in the present day, therefore present tense verbs are appropriate. Begins, arrive, welcome, are in order, ensure that the suitcases are not left unattended to prevent serious safety concerns, etc. So, using those present tense verbs there. In the second paragraph, once again, we have got no I. I'm using passive voice. I'll explain that more in a second. And I've also got some modal verbs too. For example, at the very end, this could lead to lower staff morale. And again, I'm going to talk this through in a little bit. And some examples of generalizers where I say some staff are reporting, rather than making it seem a little bit more aggressive with all of your staff say they can't have lunch. We're talking in a more general way, which comes across as more polite and formal. And then finally with paragraph 3, I'm making suggestions I'm making suggestions using lots and lots of modal verbs like families should be catered for, small children could be allocated, we should hire more staff. Improving the logistics would significantly improve, so that should, would, could. I'm also using neutral punctuation marks. Notice nowhere throughout this example have I got any exclamation marks, which come across as really quite informal. And I've also not got any contractions. So I'm not saying it's, I'm saying it is. I'm not saying I'd, I'm saying I would, right? So we're not using any of those contractions either. Now we've started getting into the language features already, but let's boil it down more. So when you're writing a formal report, what exactly should you do? I'm going to give you a bunch of different techniques, really, of making your report writing sound more formal. Some of these might come very easily to you. Some of them might be quite hard. I would say not all of them are necessary. This is if I was going to write a formal business report as an adult, what would I want it to sound like? Realistically, Cambridge, are they expecting all of this? No. If you slip up and you use a contraction like it's, can you not get 10 out of 10? Of course you can. So it's more about the overall quality of your writing, how well you've structured it, and that it does sound very formal and that you are trying to sound like a report. But don't get really mad at yourself if you can't do all of these things. Okay, disclaimer done. Let's get stuck into it. So firstly, I touched on this earlier, but you can turn the bullet points into subheadings. For example, here's the first bullet point. Explain what the role of the meeting and greeting passengers involves at present, and I changed that to the present role of meeting and greeting passengers. So it's important that you do keep the keywords and the meaning the same, otherwise you might get distracted and lose all of your reading marks, but you can turn them into subheadings like this. Evaluate potential problems for meet and greet staff and passengers, bullet 2. Potential problems for both meet and greet staff and passengers, easily changed. And the last one, suggest how the experiences of both passengers and meet and greet staff could be improved. Finally, suggest the improvements for both passengers and meet and greet staff. If you don't do subheadings, can you not get 10 out of 10? You can. You can. It just sounds nice, right? The same way that you can still get 10 out of 10 for a magazine article if you forget to give it a headline. But it sounds nice if you do give it a headline. See what I mean? Do remember to be using your present tense verbs, especially if you're discussing problems or situations that are still happening, haven't been resolved. You should definitely be using the present tense. I say this because your exam text is very likely to be in the past tense, but you are discussing a current issue, so present tense would be the best choice for a report. And you can see down there in the orange box my highlighted present tense verbs as an example, and just notice that they give it that more formal tone too in this context. Punctuation, avoid ellipses, which is your ... and avoid your exclamation marks, because both of these punctuation marks are more associated with spoken language, being excited or taking a pause, being emotional. So it's better if you avoid ellipses and exclamation marks if you're ever writing anything formal. So that also goes for newspaper report writing too, or academic writing in your other subjects. If you are writing an essay in history, for example, don't use exclamation marks. It's not very formal. As I said before, avoid contractions. A contraction is when you combine words by getting rid of letters and you put that apostrophe there to show that you've joined up two words together. Why shouldn't you use contractions? Because once again, contractions are more common in informal writing and spoken language, so you shouldn't use them in any sort of formal writing. Notice a common theme here. You don't want to include anything that sounds too spoken, like exclaiming, like using contractions. So that is a common thing that you might want to keep in your head. So for example, don't say it isn't, say it is not. Don't say it wasn't, say it was not. Don't say I'm, say I am. Don't say it didn't, say it did not. Don't say this won't, say this will not. Don't say it's, say it is. And don't say we're, say we are. Similarly, you should also try to avoid phrasal verbs. A phrasal verb is a verb that consists of two or more words, and it's usually a verb plus a preposition or an adverb, like look up, right? Look, verb, preposition, up. Phrasal verbs are more commonly associated, once again, with spoken language and informal language. So here's some example of phrasal verbs or two-word verbs. I brought up that issue already. I already mentioned that issue will be better. The car bumped into the van. The car collided with the van. Better. This report points out many problems. This report identifies many problems. Staff must pick up lost customers. Staff must retrieve lost customers. The following suggestion should be carried out. The following suggestion should be executed. So notice here that my single word verbs sound far more formal than the phrasal verbs. Once again, if you slip up and you put a phrasal verb in your report, it's not a big deal. But if you have lots and lots of phrasal verbs and contractions and exclamation marks, can you see how that gradually creates a really informal tone? You can also use some modal verbs to give suggestions. So modal verbs are auxiliary verbs, which is basically a verb that you add on to another main verb to suggest possibility, necessity, or permission. So for example, this suggestion may result in the improvement of working conditions for staff. Here our main verb is result and our auxiliary modal verb is may result. The airline should invest in new trolleys. Our main verb is invest and our modal auxiliary verb is should invest. So here are some modal verbs that you can use to give your suggestions. Can, could, may, might, shall, should, will, would, must, ought, or ought to. Ought to sounds so British, but I am British. I just did the mean British, didn't I, with no T. I am British. So let's put an ought to in there as well. Maybe goes without saying, but use academic vocabulary. So do avoid using slang or any spoken or informal language. I feel like I shouldn't need to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Don't draw emojis or smiley faces. Students still do it. Also, don't do that in your letter writing or ever in an exam. Don't do it. You can also use some formal transition phrases to link in between your ideas and paragraphs, such as however, therefore, initially, furthermore, additionally, moreover, not only, but also, similarly, likewise, correspondingly, nevertheless, on the other hand, conversely, in contrast, consequently, hence, as a result, ultimately, lastly, in essence. But do make sure that you're not overusing these. If you put one of these phrases in every single sentence, it would sound really strange and rigid and weird. So just don't do that in every single sentence. But using them here and there to help guide your reader would sound more formal and more appropriate in a report. You can also use some relative clauses to add ideas and details on. So a relative clause is a type of dependent clause that provides additional information about a noun. So it begins with a relative pronoun, like who, which, or that, or a relative adverb, where, when, and why. So they are really useful for adding on descriptive or defining information about nouns, and they enhance understanding by providing more context or details. So it does sound really quite formal, especially in a report when you're trying to be quite specific, remember, with what you're talking about. Here are two examples. The airport, which is located in the heart of the city, serves as a major hub for international flights. The passengers who arrived late had to rush to catch their connecting flights. So here we have got our relative pronouns and relative adverbs, and notice that the relative clause is separated by a comma here, and a comma here. So if you do this and you do it right, you're also going to be gaining some marks for having varied sentencing, which is why it sounds nice and formal, but it will also help to boost up your style and accuracy mark too. You can also use some generalizers and reporting verbs. A generalizer is a way of speaking about groups of people without being too specific, so generalizing. And reporting verbs show thoughts and opinions. So, generalizers. Some passengers, many staff, a small number of travellers, other travellers, the majority of meet and greet staff. So you're talking about people in vaguer terms. And reporting verbs, some passengers mentioned that. Many staff have suggested that. A small number of travellers complained that. Other travellers observed that. The majority of meet and greet staff stated that. So together, generalizers and reporting verbs sound lovely and formal and very, very appropriate for a formal report. This one is a challenge. Use passive voice. This probably isn't necessary, honestly, for Cambridge IGCSE from that example. So in that particular exam paper, they're saying you are Edgar. So it sounds like they probably would be absolutely fine if you wrote in first person I. But passive voice is a good skill. It will help you in your academic essay writing more generally, and I do think that if you did it and did it well, that Cambridge would appreciate it for style and accuracy in terms of your writing mark. So basically, passive voice is avoiding using first person I. So in academic writing, we don't like to use I. It sounds too informal. So rather than saying, I have identified some problems, you would say, some potential problems have been identified. So basically, it's getting rid of your subject, right? Your subject is the I, so you no longer have the subject in the sentence. The object is your potential problems, and your verb is identified. Here, you're beginning with your object, potential problems, and you've got your verb have been identified, but notice here you're not saying I identified, you're saying have been identified. So you're using that have been plus the past tense verb ed, and you've got no subject. Again, if this comes hard to you, I would rather that you didn't do it than did it wrong. And I still think you could get 10 out of 10, especially if Cambridge is telling you to write as a specific person, then first person surely must be fine. But if you can do this and it's quite easy and you're like, yeah, I understand passive voice. Yeah, of course I can avoid using first person I. Do it. I think it would get you a higher mark. So let's read through the full example here. So active voice would be, despite the company's high standards, I have identified some problems. Firstly, I have noted security issues with passengers, with a passenger attempting to commit theft recently. And the underlined bits are the active verb parts. Then, to change it to passive voice, despite the company's high standards, some potential problems have been identified. Firstly, security issues have been noted for passengers, with a theft incident occurring recently. So here we're no longer saying who committed the theft, we're just saying that a theft incident occurred. And all of these will be a more formal way of phrasing your report. Once again, maybe not necessary, but I think it sounds nice. And then just a final question 3 language tip, since we're talking about writing. Always use your own words, always, no matter what. So it's really, really important that you don't copy directly from the text, and this also goes for your paper 2 directed writing as well. Cambridge don't like it if you copy from the text. If you do that, they will take away a lot of marks because you're not using your own words. So why would you get a high writing mark if you're not writing yourself, you're just copying? So the examiner will definitely mark you lower if you are frequently copying words and phrases from the exam texts. If you've got an occasional word, okay. If you've got one phrase, not great, but okay. But if you're repeatedly doing it, you're doing what's called lifting. You're lifting the words from the text and putting them in your writing, and you will get hammered. So please do make sure whatever you're doing, whether you're writing a report or an interview or a speech, you must use your own words. Finally, let's take a look at my revision card, the key takeaways for report writing. Report writing is a very formal, objective and neutral text type. You should change the 3 bullet points into 3 subheadings. Avoid informal language like using phrasal verbs, contractions, slang, exclamation marks and ellipses. Write in present tense for present problems. Use passive voice if you can to avoid first person I. For example, many problems have been identified. Use generalizers and reporting verbs. Some passengers observed that. Use formal transition words like however, furthermore, similarly. And remember to always use your own words and don't copy directly from the text. I hope that you found this video lesson useful, and do remember you can find more like this on my website taughtly.co.uk. Please do like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and ask any questions that you might have in the comments. I try to reply to as many as I can, and hopefully I'll see you in my next video lesson. Bye!